Hello, and thank you for joining me. My name is Andrew Werst, and this podcast is for Miss Corinne Rombach's October physics class. Today we're going to be taking a look at sound waves, and we're going to be actually focusing on two areas of sound waves. We're going to be taking a look at one, echoes, and how all that works. And two, we're going to be taking a look at how beats work, which is essentially when you have two sound waves, but they're slightly off from each other. And we're going to be looking at the details of that. So for this, I guess you could say, experiment, we're going to be looking or using drumsticks and a drum pad. We're going to be doing some tests in the room here, and then we're going to go outside to the staircase hallway where it's really echoey. The surfaces are a lot harder than they are in here. And there's also cement on the floor, it's not carpet, so we'll see exactly how the sound waves differ from inside the house to outside. And for creating the beats, we're going to use Logic Studio, and we're going to start off with two of the exact same sounds, but then what we're going to do is we're going to start to change the frequency. We're going to start to lower the frequency on one of those sounds, and we're going to start to see how those beats come into play. So, at any rate, let's get started, and I will see you right over here with the drum pad. So, what actually happens when we make a sound? Well, we're used to seeing sound on paper, and we're used to thinking of it as just a wave, and that's in 2D. We're not used to really thinking about it in 3D like it actually is. So when we hit the pad here, it's not just, a wave going in one direction, going towards the camera or to me. It's essentially, if we think about it, because when I hit this, the stick vibrates, the pad's going to vibrate, lots of things are going to be making noise. But to keep it simple, we're just going to say that when I hit it, that initial contact, we're going to say that's the source of the sound and the only source of the sound, just so we can kind of understand this a little bit better. So what happens is when I hit this, the sound essentially is a sphere, and it's an expanding sphere. So the sound, the disturbance in the air molecules, it's going to occur right here once we hit it, and that sound is going to propagate out, and it's going to become bigger and bigger, and essentially, because this is such it's a drum. It's not a sustained sound. If I were to go like this, it seems to be sustained, but it's really not. That's just tricking the ear into thinking that the drum can have a sustained sound. So drums in particular, they're real quick sounds, and so there's not much of a disturbance because it's one quick burst. So that makes it a great example for why it's going to work. So we know that there's a sphere here, and it expands, and basically what it does is it can either bounce off of things or it can be absorbed. And right now we're inside, so there's carpet on the floors, I got the sofa over there, and then these things are absorbing the sound. So let's take one more listen to what it sounds like when the sound waves are being absorbed by lots of different materials. Right, so as you can see, it's being absorbed, it's quick, there's not much echo at all. What we're going to do now is actually head out the door to the staircase, and this outside has cement floor, cement walls, the concrete ceiling, so it's going to be really echoey, and it's going to give us a great example. So let's head outside. Okay, so we're outside, we're in the little stairwell. And as you can see, you can probably hear it in my voice already, it's really echoey in here because the walls are plain, the floor down there is cement. I mean, it's an enclosed area, it's small, it's going to be echoey. So let's take a look at how the drum pad is going to sound. And it's going to be a lot worse because it's so echoey. So let's take a look here. So, as you can see, or here rather, I should say, I don't want to keep saying that. Basically, when we hit it, the sound waves go crazy. Especially in this room, because if we look, the wall is textured. So the sound waves are going to be hitting this, and not only are they just going to be bouncing off like they would on a regular cement wall, but this has, lots of little grooves and stuff. So the sound waves are coming, and they're just going everywhere. And they get jumbled all together, and it just makes for a really jumbled and loud sound because those sound waves get bounced and they keep bouncing and bouncing, and it just makes for, it's not too pleasant because we could hear the loud notes, but when we had the smaller notes, we couldn't really hear them. So not only were the sound waves, they were all getting jumbled up, but the smaller notes were getting covered as well. So let's head back inside and we're going to take a look at the beats next. So yeah. Okay, so I do apologize for keeping the outside portion kind of quick, but I was trying not to disturb the neighbors too much. But now let's take a look at beats. So beats are not what you're going to find on the radio. The actual meaning of beats is the periodic variations in the loudness of sound due to interference. So basically what that comes down to is that you're going to have two separate sounds, and they're actually going to be the same sound, but there's going to be two of them. And they're going to be slightly off. So in certain areas of the waveform, it's going to be very complementary, and in other areas of the waveform, it's going to be uncomplimentary. So certain parts are going to stack, and other parts, it's going to be dissonance. So what I've done was I've opened up a new project in Logic Studio, and we have two tracks here of the violin, and I have their equalizers open here, and I've named them left and right to so we can distinguish between them. And as you can see, all of the frequencies are the exact same. So all of our settings are the same. These two tracks sound the same. And one thing to note is that because they sound the same, and because there's two of them, they're going to add on to each other right now. So what you're about to hear is, if I were to play one of them, then it would be a lot quieter. But because there's two, the sound waves are actually stacking on top of each other. So it's like, you see these equalizers here, where it's like we're putting them on top of each other, and they're becoming double what it actually is. So that's what's happening with the sound wave now. So let's take a listen to what this is actually going to sound like. So there we go. As you can see, it's going to be a little bit louder because, as I said, the waves are stacking on top of each other. But as you probably also noticed, or didn't notice, is that there were no beats. And the reason I say didn't notice is because there were none. So the key thing to note here is that what we're doing is we're changing the frequency. We're going to change the one on the left, and we're going to keep the one on the right the same. So this here is going to be kind of our constant, and we're going to change the frequencies around on this, and we're going to see what happens. So to start with, let's go with the high frequency. We're going to half this. We're going to put it at 6,000 hertz, and we're going to leave this one at 12,000. We're going to bring this one down, let's say, to about there we go, 400, and the 80 hertz will move down to, why not, 50. So now let's take a listen and see what we can point out from the changed frequencies. So depending on your computer speakers, you may or may not have been able to pick this out. I definitely recommend wearing headphones if you're checking this out. But basically what I heard through my headphones is that there's like this sound, and it's this is hard to describe. It's some parts of it get quieter, but then other parts of it get louder. And I mean, you can really tell if you wear your headphones what parts of the wave are complementing and which parts are not. It's kind of like a wah wah kind of sound almost. And you can really tell if you're listening to this with headphones, you'll really get a better understanding of it. What I'm going to do now is really give a really prime example of this. So we're going to shoot the right channel up to the right ear and the left channel to the left ear. And so we have two different frequencies of sounds going into the different ears, and you'll really be able to pick it out now. So let's take a listen at what the panned EQ does for us. So that should give you a really good idea of what actually is going on, and your brain is trying to make sense. So the sounds that you're hearing in your head are actually, it's your brain trying to make sense of the two frequencies, and it's trying to put a pattern together. But when the frequencies are so randomly off, it's not gonna work too well. So I mean, the beats are, it's really hard to describe what it actually sounds like. I mean, you can get a really good visual representation of it here, but to really hear it is a different thing. And I mean, of course, another way you can do it is if we reset the EQs here. Let's see. This is 80. This one is 660. There we go. We'll put this back up at 12. Oh, not that far. The best and most upfront way, and this is a very subtle way. It's a very subtle beats difference. You know, the hertz are really small because we can't hear the, you know, how many cycles are going, you know, into our ears or hitting our eardrums within a second. I mean, it's impossible for us to count. So changing these down a little bit, it's very subtle differences, but they are there, and if you have a good ear, you can definitely pick them out. The other way of checking out the beats is essentially what's called dissonance, and this is how horn players, like in drum corps or you know, symphonies, anything like that, this is how they tune, is they listen for the beats. So if we have two different notes here, like we're going to move this one down. I think I still have it on the pan. Yes, we're going to fix the pan real quick. There we go. There we go. Okay, so what we have is, on the right track we have it playing a B note, and on the left track we have it playing a C note, and it sounds horrible. And the reason it sounds bad is because they're the beats. You know, our brain is trying to make sense of the pattern, but it keeps getting offset and offset and offset, and we don't like it as much. That's why when we have, like in music, we have what are called the root, which in this case would be C, and we'll have thirds and fifths, which is the amount of steps above it. That's why those sound good, is because the waveforms, they line up together. In the case of the beats, they do not. So mainly, typically, you want to avoid the beats. The beats are usually associated with dissonance. So that's kind of what the beats are all about. Hope I was able to give a good enough demonstration. I wish Logic had an actual waveform visualizer kind of thing. And if it does, I don't know how to use it quite yet. But at any rate, that is our echo and our beats. So to sum it up, echo is when the waveforms, they bounce all over the room. Like if this was a room and our little mouse was the sound wave, you know, it's going to start in one direction and then it's just going to go all over the place. And then you get more and more of those and it just gets totally jumbled up. And then the beats is where the waveforms do not line up. As you can see here, I'm using the notes that we use in class. Some places line up and others do not. So thank you for joining me once again in this podcast. I'm going to go ahead and end the screen recording. I hope you enjoyed and you were able to check it out a little bit. So until next time, this is Andrew Werst signing out.